Well, for more, let's speak to Hong Kong correspondent Aaron Hell. Aaron, we were just listening to Carrie Lam speak there. In that press conference, she also defended this bill, but then she did say there was no longer this sense of urgency and that she was not setting a deadline to renew debate.
Yes, she did say that. For the first time publicly, she's acknowledged that Taiwan has said they do not want to cooperate. They do not want to have the suspects sent back. I think they're afraid of what the extradition bill will mean for them as well. And she continued to say that, the public just needs to understand this better. They need to take into account. She also said she was afraid of what would happen if further protests happened. We had about 81 injuries on Wednesday. They're relatively minor, is what she said. But she was concerned that further protests would mean more injuries for police, journalists, and the public.
Now, these protests have been going on for months. Was this rethink by Carrie Lam and her advisors, was it because of the protests, or was it more perhaps because of economic concerns?
That's a good question. Hong Kong does have economic concerns, but I think that the protests have just been a real embarrassment for her government and for China as it's fighting the trade war. There were reports that Chinese officials did come to Shenzhen to meet with her last night. So she's obviously under a lot of pressure right now. This is the second time since 1997 that Hong Kong government has listened to protesters. In 2003, they did a similar thing where they suspended a national security legislation after 500,000 people protested.
And Aaron, take us through what this bill was actually proposing. Remind us why it was so controversial.
Sure. The bill was proposing basically that Hong Kong could send criminal suspects to jurisdictions where it doesn't have a long-term extradition agreement on a case-by-case basis. Now, this was prompted by a case last year where a Hong Kong man murdered his Hong Kong girlfriend in Taiwan and then fled back to Hong Kong. And he couldn't be extradited because Hong Kong and Taiwan do not have an extradition agreement. They also don't have diplomatic relations. Carrie Lam today said she was very moved by the murder case after she met with the family because the government here could only prosecute the suspect for some economic crimes, for like stealing the girlfriend's cell phone. And she said, she had a lot of empathy for the family. However, while this case concerned Taiwan, it really concerned the public saw it as a situation where they might get extradited to China. They're very afraid of the Chinese justice system. They kept citing at protests, a very high conviction rate, forced disappearances, things like that concern them that they could be subject to that in China.
All right. Thanks very much, Aaron. Aaron Hell reporting from Hong Kong.